Welcome, everybody. My name is Dimitris Papadimitriou. I'm the director of the Manchester JMCE Center of Excellence. And I am delighted to introduce you all to the 2021 Annual Lecture. I know that many of you in the audience may not be familiar with the academic context and the work of the center. Let me say that this is a center that brings together research and teaching excellence from three Manchester universities: the University of Manchester, Manchester Metropolitan University, and the University of Chester. The center has a very busy schedule of events throughout the year, and the annual lecture is our sort of main event. In the past, three former prime ministers have come to speak to us. Last year, we have the now Vice President of the European Commission to speak to us. So we have a strong interest in reaching out to the practitioner world, and also getting involved as many people from the general non-university audience here in Manchester to join our events. And we hope that what is discussed here is of relevance to as many people as possible. And I think that this year, we are absolutely delighted to welcome Ambassador João Vale de Almeida, who is the EU ambassador to the UK. Sadly, now the most senior EU official in the country, a very distinguished figure in European politics with a very long career in the European Commission. The ambassador joined the service in 1982, and he has worked with a number of commission presidents in the past. Between 2004 and 2009, was the chef de cabinet of the then president José Manuel Barroso, and it was a position that he held until 2009. Subsequently, he has been very closely involved with the European Diplomatic Service, which was created at that time. He has served as the first EU ambassador to the United States between 2010 and 2014. Subsequently, became the EU ambassador to the UN, and since 2020, he took on the difficult job of the first EU ambassador in the UK. So a lot of firsts here, and absolutely stellar profile. Ambassador, we are absolutely honored and delighted to welcome you to this virtual event. We hope that in the future we will have an opportunity to bring you physically to Manchester. Just as a housekeeping, let me just say the ambassador will open up our discussion with a short talk of about 20 to 30 minutes. And then we have plenty of time for discussion. So please make sure you ask questions. It doesn't matter how difficult they are. We like the audience to get involved. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit these questions, not the chat function, but the Q&A function. And my colleague, Catherine Simpson, the Deputy Director of the Center, will collate these questions and put them to the ambassador. So thanks everybody. Thanks to everybody for coming, for taking the time to join us. And first and foremost, thanks very much to the ambassador for the honor. And Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Papadimitriou. Thank you all that had the idea to invite me and all of those that are attending today's session. It is maybe the best part of being an ambassador is to be able to interact with citizens, with students, with professors. Great always to visit universities. When I was ambassador to the United States for a little more than 4 years, I was, very happy to be able to visit all the 50 states of the United States. And everywhere I went, with maybe a couple of exceptions, I made a point of meeting, visiting a university, meeting scholars and students. And that's my intention, COVID allowing, to do the same in the United Kingdom. So I'm very glad that I'm now in contact with Manchester, 3 universities at the time, very efficient. I hope to visit, to make a real visit soon, and I look forward to engaging you at least today as a starting of a conversation. What I would like to do, if you agree, is to talk about the changing relationship in a changing world. The changing relationship I'm talking about is, of course, the one between the EU and the United Kingdom, and the changing world is our only world, is the world we live in and that we more and more share on a collective basis. We are just less than 4 months into the full Brexit, the economic Brexit that followed the institutional Brexit. And we are all naturally and obviously focused on the events of the day, on what dominates the news cycle. And if you look back to the first 3-4 months, there ain't that many reasons to rejoice, because the climate and the atmosphere in our bilateral relations could have been better. And the press has highlighted mostly disagreements and controversy, and not the kind of quality forward-looking cooperation that I think we all aim at. So I'd like to make a first message, which is that we should not jump to conclusions about the relationship just on the basis of what is happening in the first weeks and months. I think it will be careless to conclude that we will keep this pattern of atmosphere for the future. I believe we will not, and I hope we will not. We are still in the early days. So I think we need to take some distance from the news cycles, and but also from today's times, and in order to understand better where we come from, and why we are here, and also to try to anticipate and prepare the years to come. So let me start going back quickly to a few years in time, to try to characterize the evolution of the context in which Brexit happened and the context in which we live still today. I think it's relevant to briefly look back at what I call the 21st century at 21. I mean, we are reaching the 21 mark in the 21st century, so it's an interesting moment to look back. And I've chosen for this exercise 4 dates, 4 years within this 21 that I believe illustrate well what has happened. The first one is 2001. And if you look back history, and we're talking to students and scholars, always interesting to go back in the past to understand better the present and the future. But if you go back to 2001, you would notice that 2 important events that happened with a 3 months interval. I'm referring to the attacks on the Twin Towers on 9/11, September 11, 2001, New York, and the accession of China to the World Trade Organization exactly 3 months later in December. Why did I choose this year and these 2 events? Again, to illustrate things that are still impacting us today. The attack in downtown Manhattan was the biggest challenge ever to the cultural hegemony of the United States. It triggered, as we know, a series of consequences that are still there today in terms of the perception and reality of the world stage. The accession of China to WTO was extremely important to launch and trigger a process of hyper-globalization that started with that. And throughout a number of years, we have seen trade growing faster than GDP. We have seen millions and millions of people pulled out of poverty, particularly in China, but not only. We've seen 20 years of the China awakening or the China rise or whatever you want to call it. This country came to be, of course, a major power today. But it also had a number of impacts in our countries, in our part of the world, in the United States, in the industrialized world, where an unequal and suboptimal sharing of wealth and the benefits of globalization created new poor in our rich countries. And combined with the evolution of technology, it created a phenomenon which I like to synthesize and summarize by saying globalization and technological development created many new jobs. The problem is that these jobs were not necessarily created at the same place where we had lost the old jobs. And this introduction of this dimension is still there with us today in terms of reality, but also the perception of reality. The second date, the second year I would highlight is 2008. And again, I look at events that took place, with a little interval of distance between the two. I'm talking about the collapse of the Lehman Brothers Bank and the invasion of Georgia by Russia. The latter happened in August, the former happened in September. Because of my function at the time, I was deeply involved in both, so I have vivid memories of both events. But what I retain today is, of course, that the collapse of Lehman Brothers marked symbolically the beginning of a great recession, the biggest recession since the one in the 20s, 30s of the previous century. But it also marked the end of a sort of a free ride of financial markets and financial actors. And it brought us very much aware of the limits of the national dimension and its capacity to deal with global realities. And I think, again, this is still with us today. The invasion of Georgia by Russia is, for me, the beginning of the end of the post-Cold War consensus. We had agreed around the concept of end of history that things will never be the same as before, that there was a consensus and an understanding how to organize our societies and the world. Well, the Russian decision, which was later, unfortunately, confirmed by the invasion of Ukraine and the annexation of Crimea, and we know what is happening today in that region as well. This was the beginning, in my view, of the end of the consensus that we had thought we had achieved after the end of the Cold War. All this is still impacting us today. The third date I wanted to highlight is a more positive one, is 2015, where the international community was able to adopt an extremely ambitious and consensual agenda, at least at the time, the Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals agenda, adopted by the United Nations, but also the Paris Agreement on climate change. So this was a moment of, I would say, glory for the multilateral system, capable of addressing in a collective and consensual way major challenges for mankind, as the ones reflected in the Sustainable Development Goals and in the Paris Agreement. And of course, the fourth date I wanted to highlight is 2016, where, you know, historians, I think, will record this year as having produced two major events in the kind of, you know, analysis that we're having here today. The first one was the election of President Trump as the new president of the United States. And the second one was the vote by the British people in favor of Brexit. We can call them political earthquakes. You know, maybe a more calm analysis of it would reveal that these two events illustrate maybe an accumulation of contradictions, of tensions that were brought to our societies by, again, hyper-globalization, by a feeling of not being in control of events at the national level in the face of global developments, and certainly a divorce between the political elites, the establishment, and the voters. I think there were patterns in these two events that historians will more carefully look at. But they also reveal, and in 2016 it was already clear, an evolution of geopolitical power shifts in the world, but also cleavages in our society. So you had at the same time tensions at the global level and tensions inside our own societies. So where are we now, 4 years down the road after 2016, having in mind all these and many other events that somehow characterize, and I'm being, of course, telegraphic for the sake of the time that we have, that characterize the first 21 years of the 21st century. So where are we now? I mean, if you look at the US, President Trump has been replaced by President Biden, and we are seeing the difference. But we should be under no illusions that Trumpism and the causes that explain that movement, they are still there. And they are not exclusive to the United States. They reveal cleavages in our societies that are extremely important to consider. If you take Brexit, well, 4 years after the referendum, Brexit is basically done, institutionally and economically and trade-wise. Of course, it's done in terms of, you know, all the elements that characterize it have been implemented. We'll see what kind of dynamics it will create, but we can talk about that a little later. What we see today is that the US-China rivalry that we have been spotting in the last few years is not abated, and neither is Russia's assertiveness. The divisions in our societies, you know, basically between those who believe in open societies and open economies, and those who are keen to resist that openness, these divisions are still there. The values debate, the debate about values and their importance, the narrative wars is very much a reality today. We have an ideological debate about how to organize societies. There are, you know, the idea of the end of history did not materialize, of course, and now we have systems, some call it illiberal democracies, some call it dictatorships or authoritarian regimes that place themselves in the public debate as alternatives to our liberal democracy. And of course, we are in not normal times because we have a global recession and a global pandemics that we are still struggling with. And last but not least, we have to consider, and we have doubts and concerns and issues about the role of technology, the role of artificial intelligence, data protection, privacy, the digital society, and what this will bring to our daily lives and the way we organize our society. So overall, the context remains challenging, the context remains volatile, and we should not lose sight of this global context, regional context, if you want, the big picture. We should not lose sight of the big picture when we look at the the shorter, smaller picture, narrow picture of the relationship between the EU and UK. And that's my next point. I would like to say a few words about the bilateral relationship between the EU and the UK and how we see it evolving. So the first point is that, as I said earlier, we are in the early days of the post-Brexit situation, and we need to be very much aware of that. Not rush to conclusions, but be attentive and realistic about how we can evolve. Also, we need to be very much aware that decisions have consequences. And the fact that the British people chose to leave the European Union means that their relationship with us will never be the same as it was before, because the choice was made, not only of Brexit, but also of leaving the single market and the customs union, which adds to the sort of distance that is established between the EU and the United Kingdom. We are in the beginning, and we need, I think, if you take the different stages of grief, the last one is acceptance. And I think we are still in the process of accepting that there has been a Brexit, both in Britain and the United Kingdom. But this is normal when we made such a change. It's like in a divorce, I believe, when people after divorce, there's a time for adjustment and adaptation. We are still there, but we should not overlook the fact that there will be, in any case, structural changes to our relationship. If I look at the climate of around the relationship, as I said earlier, it's not been very helpful, not very constructive, not very positive. And I hope we can overcome and move on very soon from this, the climate. I think it is linked to the fact that we had 4 traumatic years of negotiations after the referendum, and people are still, to a large extent, sort of conditioned by that. I hope we can move on to a more constructive and cooperative and consensual way of working. We can only solve problems in a cooperative way, not in a unilateral way. And I regret that sometimes the government, the British government, has chosen to go unilateral instead of a more constructive way. I think, and I see signs of this changing, and I hope this will be sustainable and that we can move on. I think we should be proud of what we have achieved. We avoided the no deal, which would have been disastrous. We have 2 important agreements, the withdrawal agreement and the trade and cooperation agreement. We now need to make them work. We need to make this relationship work. So how it will be in the future, difficult to predict. We don't know how the context will evolve. The relationship will have its own dynamics. The agreements, I have some elements of evolution. Not everything is set in stone. So it largely depends on the political will on both sides to move in the right direction. So what kind of relationship in the future? I think it's basically in our hands. It's in our hands. It's a daily task of all of us, authorities, diplomats, but also civil society and business. I think we will either have a permanent state of alert or some sort of I would call a perma-Brexit, or a dynamic, competitive but constructive relationship. I prefer the latter to the former. I think that a dynamic, competitive but constructive relationship would be good for citizens. It will be good for business. I think it will be good for the world, because the world needs these 28 important countries, the EU and UK, to be part of the solution of today's problems. I think it will be good for multilateralism, and we need to preserve liberal rules-based order. But most importantly, I think it will be good for our common values and for our common strategic interests. So in a nutshell, and I conclude with this, respecting your time indications, I would say that I hope and believe that the future EU-UK relationship, the one that we are building every day now, that it will have shared values as its foundation, shared interests as its cement, and mutual respect and trust as the rules that we should both abide by. Thank you very much. I look very much forward to our discussion, and thank you for hosting me today.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. That was an excellent overview and a very comprehensive scene setter for our discussion, which given a lot of clarity to me, at least. For those of you who don't know, the ambassador has studied history as his first degree back at the University of Lisbon, and I wanted to kickstart our discussion with a question, if I may, to allow others to submit their own as well. And the question is more reflective in some ways, or the answer perhaps ought to be a bit more reflective. And looking back at history, I mean, those of us who lived in the UK for the past few decades, we have seen Brexit coming, or we have seen aspects of Brexit developing over a number of years. I wonder, from your own experience, what do you think the EU could have done differently to prevent that sort of the sleepwalking towards Brexit? I mean, we know very well what happened here, but I just thought, is there anything you feel that the EU could have done differently to perhaps change that trajectory, looking back at it now with some distance, and in trying to get into the final stage of grief, as you mentioned? Is there anything now, looking back, that you have regrets for?
I think we should all be humble, and we should always consider that we could have done better. That's my principle in life, and I think we are going through these terrible pandemics, and I see too much of a sort of a tendency to hold beauty contest on the back of a tragic pandemic. And I always think we should be more humble than we are in dealing with realities that are very complex. So if I look back at Brexit, I think I will have the same approach. There's a lot of reflection in the UK about what went wrong and went right. And I've talked to many British friends discussing how did this happen and why. So there's plenty of explanations there, and I'm sure we could all have done better. But I've been throughout my career at the European Union dealing with a number of situations in member states. There were a number of referenda, you may remember, around the Constitution and around the Lisbon Treaty as well. And the question was always pretty much the same. Should Brussels, should the European institutions be more present in the national debate or not? Some say that we should have been more present in the British debate. And I've seen a former president of the Commission saying that just a couple of days ago. Others say, no, it would have been counterproductive because we need to allow, national public opinions to have their own debates. And, foreigners with a bad accent like mine, coming from different parts of the European Union, are they really relevant for a national debate? And we need to, basically, I think our line has been historically to follow the advice of the national authorities and say, well, should we be part or not? If they think it's better that we are not part of it, we should abstain. But that is more to the reply to your question than this. That it's also about the way the European Union operates as a whole, its relationship with the citizens, its proximity or lack of with the citizens that ultimately determine the future of the European Union. And I think all that we are learning every day, how we need the European institutions to be closer to citizens. We started this week, as you may know, a platform to allow citizens to contribute to the conference on the future of Europe. All the EU citizens, even those living in the UK can participate. And it's another example of an attempt to reach out to our citizens. But there's also another aspect, maybe the last one I will refer, is the attitude of national governments. And some people say, and I tend to agree, you cannot criticize the Union from Monday to Friday and ask them to vote for the EU on Sunday or Saturday. There is a responsibility of national authorities. If they believe in this project, which they do, there has to be a permanent state of advocacy, a critical advocacy, not a blind one, but support to the project in a way that provides the citizens and the voters with all the elements of information that would allow them ultimately to exercise their right to decide. We can talk about the role of the media, and I know the media is very important in the UK and it played an important role in the run-up to Brexit. We can talk about the role of universities as well. So I think there is a collective responsibility as far as the European project is concerned, to create the best conditions for an informed debate and informed decisions.
That's very good. Thanks very much. I know that Catherine has been collating questions and has a follow-up question on the conference on the future of Europe. So I'll pass on to my colleague for a few more questions.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. That was a really fascinating talk. I want to pick up on your comment on the future of Europe and the upcoming conference. What role do you see this playing in potentially reform of the European Union? Because it has got off to quite a shaky start with, it's been quite a long process. There has been a lot of disagreement between EU member states. So what is the ultimate goal for the European Union from the conference on the future of Europe?
Well, I think the first goal is to allow citizens to participate, to express their views, to come with new ideas. I don't think we should build, and we did not build, to be very frank, European from top down. It has been a bottom up. If you look at the history of the European Union, I happen to be born in the same year of the Treaty of Rome, so I know how old we are. But if you look at the evolution of the European Union since 1957, it's been an incremental evolution. It was, we didn't say in 57 that we should have a single currency or a single market or a common foreign and security policy. It started with a lower level of ambition, and it has been, adding on different layers of more sophisticated cooperation. So, and it's been a democratic exercise, always validated or not by the public opinion. As we mentioned about the constitutions, for instance, there was this idea of a constitution. It didn't gather enough support, so we moved to other formulas. The Treaty of Lisbon incorporates that new approach. And we are at the crossroads now after Brexit, with a new international situation that I briefly characterized a while ago, that requires certainly a reflection about the future of the Union. Our leaders have decided, and rightly so in my view, to consult the population. Let's be without prejudice to what the citizens will say. You mentioned difficulties in setting up the conference. I think this is, in my view, and with due respect, relatively irrelevant, because it's part of the system. Our system is complicated, We have 27 countries, 24, 25 official languages. We have different cultures, different histories. The fact that we bring all these countries together in peace is already a major achievement. But of course, it's cumbersome. Sometimes it takes time. But I always say I prefer people fighting over a communique, over a statement, than really fighting on the streets, on the battlefield. I mean, this is the choice. This is the choice that we have, and my choice, I think yours as well, is very clear. We go for bureaucracy if that's the price to pay for peace, or a certain degree of a cumbersome procedure. So now, coming back to the consultation, I hope it will produce good ideas, forward-looking ideas. and that it will allow at the later stage consideration at the political level. We'll see where we go, but I'm hopeful, and I'm again inviting all those European citizens in the UK. There are ways of connecting. I cannot give you the exact link now, but it's available everywhere. It was launched this week, and I'm told that the reaction has been already very positive.
And I just perhaps chip in here, Catherine, because there is a question from Russell Yates that talks a little bit about this issue of civil society, and it's an interesting one, I think, because I mean, obviously, EU nationals can participate in this discussion that has been initiated about the future of Europe. That's a great idea, but there is also an element of civil society in Britain who has a genuine interest in what happens in Europe, and a big part of it also harbors ambitions for Britain one day to return to the EU. And the question, I guess, is what is the EU doing to engage civil society here in Britain? And that's very, very important, because it seems to me that a lot of the outreach work that the European Union will be doing in the UK will be against the context of a, how shall I frame it, in a context of a national government that is not particularly thrilled for this interaction to be taking place. So are there any programs, are there any initiatives that will allow British citizens to be part of this discussion without, of course, antagonizing the British government and the decision about Brexit?
Well, thank you for the question. The fact that I'm here with you shows modestly that myself and my team, we are very much open to civil society in Britain. But I can give you a few other examples. If I take, and I see colleagues and friends from the 3 Million campaign are certainly joining us today. What we are doing as far as the settle status campaign, we do it with civil society. We do it with a number of organizations around the UK that represent or organize or work with European Union citizens. And our purpose is to have a maximum of citizens registered. And I want to use this opportunity, if you allow me, to make an appeal to all the EU citizens in the United Kingdom, regardless of their age, of how long they've been staying here or not, to apply, to register. It's not, the deadline is the 30th of June. The sooner, the better. And I call on all of them to do participate. Connect with us, European Union delegation website. We have a number of lawyers working with us, helping people to register. We are working, as I said, with a number of organizations of civil society to help citizens get registered. This is a good example of us going out of our offices in Westminster and reaching out through the network of civil society. I want to do the same in all areas. I'm working well, of course, with the European movement in the UK, with a number of other organizations that are keen to stay in touch with the European Union. Our delegation is open to that, COVID allowing, and this is a clear instruction I've given to all my staff. Reach out, open up. We are not here just to deal with the government. We are here to deal with the British people and the EU citizens residing in Britain. So this is very much our approach. So please get in touch with us. If you have ideas and initiatives, we'll let you know. We are doing a number of things around the Europe Day on the 9th of May. So I invite you to consult our website where more is said about that. And I'll be myself, again, COVID allowing, traveling around the country as much as possible and meeting as many civil society representatives as possible. So this is very much our line of thinking.
Fantastic, thank you very much. I'm going to just stick with the theme of Brexit, and I've collated some questions together to under a couple of themes to bring to you. So the first theme under the broader topic of Brexit is on citizens' rights. We've had quite a lot of questions come in on this. And there's two questions I'd like to pose to you under this. Is what is being done to try and get ID cards in the UK? So one of our members who've joined us today said the online system is not working, and EU countries are giving British citizens living in the EU ID cards, but that doesn't seem reciprocal. So what is being done there? And also, does the EU care about European citizens in the UK, and what are the EU's plans on this area?
Well, we do care, as I've been saying, we do care a lot. Together with the embassies, let's be clear, it's not only the EU delegation working together or in favor of, in support of citizens, it's each and every an embassy of the 27 member states are very active. We work as a network, every week, and if sometimes more than that, we meet to coordinate our efforts regarding citizens. We work together with the Home Office and the Foreign Office. There's a lot going on we are financing a number of NGOs, financing a number of initiatives. So I invite all of you to connect with us on all this, and via also a number of NGOs that work on that. So this is one of my priorities, and I'm now focused on the settled status, the deadline of the 30th of June. We are in constant contact with the British authorities to try to solve problems that arise, the beginning was slow. I think it's much better now in terms of addressing some bottlenecks, some difficulties. The issue of ID cards is very much a British matter. I cannot interfere in the way the British authorities have organized it. I think we agreed that the basis for this procedure will be electronic. I know a number of NGOs have been pleading and supporting the idea of documents, printed documents being given, or cards, or physical evidence of the status. We accompany that, and we are in permanent contact with the Home Office to try to address issues. My main concern now on that front, if you wish, is to reach out to a maximum number of citizens, but particularly those who are maybe less close to the mainstream. I'm talking about elderly people who have maybe less connection with internet and the electronic means. Some people that live here for so long that they don't even believe that they are in need to register. They think we've lived here forever. Why do I need to do this? Well, they do need to do this if they are not a British citizen. But also people in communities which are a little bit outside, again, of the mainstream. So we want to reach out to all of them. And I want to use your platform here also as a tool to reach out to all of those.
Thank you very much. Again, still on the topic of Brexit, I've kind of clumped this together, and this is a more kind of tried to, as they put them together as thematically as possible, but this one's probably quite difficult. So there's 4 questions here that I would like to give you. The first one is, how do you think relations between the UK and the EU will change as a new generation of negotiators and politicians gain more responsibility? The second one, which I'm sure we could probably spend a whole seminar on, is can you explain the dispute over Northern Ireland and the Northern Irish Protocol? The third question is, what do you think needs to happen for the UK-EU relationship to become more constructive? And finally, according to one survey, and the survey is not stated which one, more than half of Europeans believe that the EU is likely to collapse within a generation. We would be interested to hear your comments on those. Thank you.
Good, very good questions. As you said, we could spend a couple of days on each of them. Or well, change in relationship with new generation. Well, I believe in change, and I believe in youth. At one point in my career, I was in charge of the youth policy of the European Union, and I can tell you this were maybe the most refreshing years of my professional career. Always being challenged by young people, always being confronted with new ideas and new ways of doing things. So I firmly believe that things will evolve positively. And of course, as a new generation comes in that was not involved in the Brexit disputes, that was not part of this difficult period, you know, it may bring freshness to the debate. Let's see. But as a principle, I'm very hopeful, and I do believe in renovation, and I'm sure there will be new blood coming in. I already see that today. I must say that I see in the last few weeks some positive evolution in the climate of our relationship, and I hope that in the coming weeks things will even improve further. So one of the areas in which we are discussing and working very hard is Northern Ireland, and let me be clear about one point. When Brexit was voted and the government opted for the formula of leaving the single market and the customs union, we all knew that the most delicate, the most intricate issue to be solved was Northern Ireland, because you know it was like I normally say, it's like squaring a circle. So you have on one side to protect the Good Friday Agreement, which means that there should be no hard border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. At the same time, you have to respect the constitutional order of the United Kingdom, which tells you that Northern Ireland is an integral part of the United Kingdom. And thirdly, you need to protect the single market of the European Union. Northern Ireland, in order not to have a border between North and South, Northern Ireland has to be part of the internal market for goods, meaning that if there is no border between the North and the South, the border must be somewhere, because the single market is by definition a closed market for countries who are not members of the single market and of the European Union, which is the case of the United Kingdom. So the only alternative is to put that border somewhere in the Irish Sea between the part of the UK, which is not part of the single market for goods, and Northern Ireland, which is part of our single market and at the same time part of the UK market. So if you're still following me, this is like squaring a circle. It's very difficult. And our negotiators spent a couple of years, long years, and you remember that, trying different forms. You remember Theresa May and then Boris Johnson and different negotiators. Well, we kept the same negotiator, Michel Barnier did a great job, but it was still very difficult. So there was no rock or no stone left unturned in this discussion. And the result of that, the consensual result of that, which is now EU law and British law, is the famous protocol, which sort of encapsulates the solutions for difficult problems created by Brexit, not created by the European Union, created by the decision to leave the European Union and the decision to leave the internal market and the customs union. So this is where we are. And this protocol is now fully in force, and it needs to be implemented. And our principle is to say, let's implement what we have agreed, and within those limits, let's be as flexible as we can to facilitate people's lives. As simple as that. The United Kingdom on a couple of occasions was tempted by unilateral action, either through the internal market bill in last fall, where they announced that they will not respect the protocol, then they changed their position. And now more recently in March, by taking unilateral action, we rather see the mechanisms that are created by the protocol to produce those decisions. We don't believe that unilateral decisions are solutions for this problem. This is where we are today. But as we speak, I'm more confident than maybe I was 3 or 4 weeks ago that we can find the platform where we respect everything I told you about, the squaring of the circle, but at the same time, we address some genuine and real difficulties that people in Northern Ireland are having, business and citizens. And I'm hopeful that if there is goodwill and if there is good faith on both sides, we can find those solutions. And the third question was about what needs to change to improve the relationship. I would say, in a nutshell, we need a change of mindset. So we need all of us to focus more on the future than on the past, to move on from the negotiation mode into a more constructive one. We respect what we have decided. We have to implement what we have agreed, the two agreements, but within that, with good faith and goodwill and mutual trust, I think we can, within the institutions that we have created for that purpose, we can find the right solutions and we can improve the climate in our relationship. Last question about the collapse of the European Union. You know, I've been working for the Union for almost 40 years now, and I've lived to many occasions where people were saying exactly the same. This is the end of the EU. It won't last more than a year or two. It's about to collapse. Well, it never collapsed. It has grown from 6 to 27. It has moved from a simple a common market of coal and steel to what we have today, which is the biggest internal market in the world, a world power, a world economic power, a world regulatory power, a world political and values power, we are not going to collapse anytime soon, I can guarantee you.
I would agree. As someone who deals with a lot of opinion poll data, I've certainly been told the same thing over and over again, and I would wholeheartedly agree. The next question, still on the theme of Brexit, but we're moving on slightly to more specifically the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement. Is there a concern within the European Union that a positive outcome for the UK to trade favourably with the EU, but also with other countries around the world, would activate potentially the demise of the European Union, or advocating other member states to leave the EU?
Yeah, well, it's about the same topic. What is the state of, you know, we have two unions here, right? The European Union on one side and the United Kingdom on the other. And it's interesting also from an academic point of view to analyze the evolution and the state of each union. I'll let you analyze the one on the United Kingdom side with, you know, the debate in Scotland, the debate in Wales, the situation in Northern Ireland. That's not for me to judge or to assess. I can tell you about my own union, and we are going through difficult times like everybody else in the world with a global recession, a global pandemics. But if I look at the way we reacted to these pandemics and to this recession, I'm extremely encouraged, and I'm even proud. You know, last summer, faced or confronted with the health, the sanitary and economic impact of COVID, we took very bold decisions regarding our reaction, our recovery and resilience reaction to this situation. And we took a number of unprecedented decisions about the way to finance the European Union, about the financial effort to support the member states. And we got very good news this morning with the decision of the Constitutional Court of Germany not to stop the process of ratification by Germany of the decisions that were taken at European level last July. And this is a terribly important news just this morning that I'm very glad to acknowledge, because they mean that we will go ahead with the ratification of all these measures, and very soon the EU will be equipped like never before to react to these pandemics in a forward-looking way. It's about being resilient, but green and digital. And this is very much what we need to do to adapt our societies and our economies. So I'm very hopeful that we can move forward out of this crisis in a much better situation. If I look at the management of the pandemics itself, there's a lot that has been said about vaccination, about the way we operate. We can discuss that if we want. I'm again very proud, I must say, because if I look at figures, for instance, we are the biggest exporter of vaccines in the world, by far. We are the biggest supporter financially of multilateral initiatives in support of of developing countries like COVAX and with Gavi. We support all this more than anybody else. And so at the same time, we have a solidarity approach inside the Union because we want all member states to have access to vaccines, and the solidarity approach to the outside, which is to allow a maximum number of countries access to vaccines. So also on that front, I'm afraid I see good news rather than bad news.
That's great to hear. I want to move us on now to foreign policy. And again, some of the questions I've collated around this. So there's about 3 or 4 questions here for you. The first one is, what do you think, Ambassador, about the impact of the UK's deal with Morocco for an underground tunnel via Gibraltar on the UK-EU ties moving forward? The second question is, what role will the EU seek to play in the Arctic Circle and all of the concerns that are coming out via climate change? The third question is Franco-German leadership of the EU still as dominant post-Brexit? And finally, on the kind of aspect of civil society in action, is the EU interested in involving the city twinning partnerships, which are very lively between so many British towns and cities across all EU member states? Thank you.
Good. Well, let me start with the last one, because again, the fact that you have a relatively long career makes it more likely. I was once in charge of the city twinning program in the EU. So, and this was a very rewarding responsibility, because I saw very tiny villages and towns across the Union, including the UK, having very close links. It's a great proximity program, I would call it. And I don't know, to be very frank, I don't know the state of that program now after Brexit. I will need to check that, and I will let you know. But as a concept, I believe it's an extraordinarily important. And even if the EU cannot necessarily finance those projects with UK, I can only personally encourage UK initiatives to get closer and closer to the European Union. I think this is valid overall. The fact that we are not anymore members of the same union does not mean that we are not neighbors, good neighbors, allies and friends. You know, let's make a distinction here, right? So, you know, a divorced couple is not necessarily an enemy couple, right? You know, I've seen many divorced couples that keep in very good relations in spite of the divorce, and they take care of the kids together, and they share the same values and the same principles. So I think there's a future there, also the town twinning and city twinning. But again, I don't know the details of the program right now. I cannot comment on this idea of a tunnel to Morocco. I'm not informed about that. Regarding the Arctic Circle, this is strategically important, environmentally important. Some of our countries have an Arctic dimension, of course, and we're very, very keen of the European Union being an Arctic actor. There are strategic and defense and security issues around the Arctic. We are developing an Arctic strategy, an Arctic approach on the European Union side. Of course, we need to and want to work with, you know, countries like Canada, the US, or Russia, and others, Norway by definition as well, and Iceland, and many others. And we believe that this is a new reality that has different components that require fully our attention. French and German leadership. Well, it all started with France and Germany, right? We just commemorated a few days ago the 70th anniversary of the Treaty of Paris, which was the very beginning of the European Union, the coal and steel community between France and Germany. And this is a fundamental, critical, pillar relationship inside the European Union. But it's not all in the European Union. It's an important element, but the Union is more than that. What I see today, to be very, very, very objective, I see a very good relationship, a continuous good relationship between Berlin and Paris, between Germany and France. I don't see the fact that the UK has left that there will fundamentally change that relationship. But of course, it's not enough for Berlin and Paris to agree for things to move in the European Union. It's very important. I would say it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. We need more than that. We need the dynamics inside the EU with such a great number of countries. But I continue to believe that the Franco-German relationship is an asset for the European Union, and it continues to be a main element of progress for our project.
Let me just chip in here, Catherine, just for
Definitely.
a minute, staying within the foreign policy domain, and of course, considering your very substantial international experience, everybody's talking about multipolarity in today's world, and how the liberal paradigm needs to be preserved, both in terms of trade, but also sort of reflecting a wider culture of international cooperation that the EU, of course, very much stands for, and it has been a very great advocate too. Does it worry you that somehow internationally this kind of multilateral emphasis seems to be retreating somehow? It retreated an awful lot during the Trump years, of course, but do you see perhaps systemic tensions here, that the world may be moving away from this paradigm, and the EU would still remain committed to it and somehow lose out? That's one issue on the broader picture, because I think that you are so well qualified to talk about these. And secondly, and closer to home, I think that the refugee crisis in recent years has done a lot of reputational damage to the EU in the way that it responded. We know that in a number of Southern European countries in particular, populist, far-right parties have benefited a lot from blaming the EU and blaming the refugee crisis for problems in their country. But of course, behind all of these lay the actual problems that lead people to seek refuge to other parts of the world, Europe in particular. And I'm thinking here, is the EU doing enough in the Middle East? Is the EU doing enough in Africa? I mean, these are really regions that are so close to home, produce so many negative externalities for the EU. Not to mention, of course, Russia and so on. And the EU seem to me not to be doing enough. But, we are certainly second fiddle in the Middle East, and we are perhaps too slow, possibly too phobic on Africa. I mean, you talked earlier on about renewal and the importance of bringing new blood into the system. Is the EU doing enough of this, you think, right now?
Thank you. On multilateralism, I was ambassador for 4 years at the UN, and I can tell you, of course, that multilateralism has gone through a difficult time. Our concept of multilateralism, which is a liberal, rules-based order that we've created after the Second World War, that we reinforced after the end of the Cold War, but is now being under stress. And I told you about 2015, when we approved, the global community approved the SDG agenda, the Agenda 2030, and the climate change Paris Agreement. If you look today, it's not going very well, either of them. In terms of the implementation of the SDG goals, we are behind schedule. COVID has made things even worse in terms of the goals that we would like to attain by 2030. Climate change, we are again losing time, and we need to speed up things. We are looking at the Glasgow COP26 as an opportunity to catch up and to move forward. But again, COVID complicating things. So, and within the multilateral system, you have different concepts of multilateralism. And some that claim to be multilateralists have a concept for multilateralism which is not exactly ours, not based on the same values. So we need also to make distinctions there. So there's a big debate going on about it. We welcome the new positioning of the American administration, much more aligned, if not totally aligned, with our own concept of multilateralism, wishing to re-energize multilateralism. As you know, the return to the Paris Agreement. There are conversations for their return to the Iran nuclear agreement, and on climate change. President Biden is hosting a summit in the next couple of days. So I think these are good news for multilateralism, and we should rejoice about that. But this is a permanent fight to preserve the values that we stand for, and I see that as a major element of alliance and commonality with our British friends and the British authorities. If you take the G7 summit agenda that the UK will host in June in Cornwall, or the COP26 in Glasgow, you will see British and Europeans exactly on the same footing, fighting the same battles. And that's another illustration of what I was saying earlier about the potential of this relationship. On the refugee crisis, is one of the many crises around which people were saying that this would have been or could be the collapse or mean the collapse of the European Union. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. Like it didn't happen with the euro area sovereign debt crisis, like it didn't happen when we were not capable of agreeing on a constitution, and many other occasions. And again, I don't think COVID will mean the end of the European Union whatsoever. But the refugee crisis is a very serious issue, and the refugee issue is a very serious one that requires, in my view, in our view, a collective approach, a solidarity approach among the countries of the European Union, but also the international community. And I had to deal in New York for many weeks with these issues of refugees, and it requires international commitment and cooperation. But it's also part of the internal debate in our countries, and you've seen that in the UK as well. There's a live, vivid discussion about how to deal with issues of immigration, legal, non-legal, the issue of asylum, the issue of refugee. So it's a permanent debate. We are in the European Union trying to find ways of having common solutions among our member states. Not easy, but we overcame the worst period in 2015 and around that. I think it's a situation that will continue to occupy us. You refer to Africa and the Middle East, saying we're not doing enough. I mean, okay, that's a point of view. That's a point of view. Is the glass half full or half empty? What I can notice regarding Africa, for instance, is that we have in the last couple of years absolutely introduced a qualitative change in our approach to Africa. A quantitative change as well, because numbers are quite impressive. I remember that the first foreign visit of the new president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, was to Addis Ababa, the capital of the African Union, and the message was very clear: we are with you, we want to work with you. So more can be done always, but I see, contrary to, or more than a few years ago, I would say, a genuine awareness of the need to engage more in Africa. And in our neighborhood, I mean, we have a very interesting, let's put it this way, important, relevant neighborhood around the European Union.
And one follow-up, a little bit more provocative question here. I'll ask you to reflect on your former employer, I guess, because now formally you are a member, or you work for the council, perhaps, but with regards to the European Commission and going back to the refugee crisis, you said in a very elegant but also diplomatic way that we struggle within the EU to come to agreements on this issue. Do you think that perhaps the European Commission in the refugee crisis has perhaps fallen a little bit short in acting, as it has done so successfully in the past, as a generator of consensus, as the institution that brings these disparate agendas under a single roof? Has it perhaps fallen short in exercising the leadership that many pro-Europeans would expect the Commission to do? And that, of course, also links with the issue of the vaccines. I mean, you did say, and I totally agree with you, that the underlying principles of the European approach to the vaccination program were very noble, that perhaps no EU member state should be left without vaccines and so on. All of that is great. But I can't stop thinking that somehow the European Commission lost an opportunity here of delivering the vaccination program in a way that was very, very relevant to everyday citizens, and it would have helped an awful lot with boosting pro-European sentiments across the 26 member states. I know
let me take the vaccination one, because I think people are interested by that for obvious reasons. Well, my first comment on the vaccination debate, let's put it this way, is that I think it's close to immoral to try to hold a beauty contest on the back of a tragic pandemic, and I refuse to do so. Who's doing better? Who's more perfect than the other? I don't think that's the point. The second comment is that I think this is a marathon, not a sprint. And if I look back to the situation 6-8 months ago in the UK, you may remember the government was being attacked for a suboptimal reaction to the pandemics. People were saying Europe is doing much better than the UK. We are lagging behind. The number of deaths per 1,000 inhabitants is much higher than anywhere else. So I remember those controversy inside the UK only 6 to 7, 8 months ago. Now the feeling and the perception is quite different. The UK is the best and the EU is terrible. Well, this is not a sprint, and this is a marathon. The marathon is not yet over. And if I look at the projections on vaccination for the coming weeks and months, they tell me that we'll reach our goal of 70% of adults vaccinated by midsummer instead of late summer, which is more or less the calculation for the British side. But again, I cannot contradict myself. I don't want to enter into a beauty contest, but still the figures are there, and I think they are important. Our choice was a solidarity choice, meaning there were two alternatives at the beginning of the process. Either each country will go on its own, and you know what happens in that situation. Those who are bigger, those who are stronger, those who are more means would have better conditions of access. Our union is made of a majority of small and medium-sized countries rather than big countries. So the choice made by our authorities, I believe, was the right one. Let's go together so that everyone has access to resources according to their needs, and basically at the same time in the same conditions. I think the approach was the right one. But of course, we are doing this. These are uncharted waters. No one has ever dealt with a situation like this. So there are, ways and means of doing it. If we start again, we may have done it. We could have done it differently. I don't know. I'm not an expert. But I continue to support the initial principle of solidarity. The same that applies to the outside world, as I was saying earlier, and I can give you a few figures because students like to be precise. So this may be outdated for 2 or 3 days, but latest information I had is that we were able to export 81 million doses certainly today more than 81 million doses, to 42 countries. We are, as such, the biggest exporter of vaccines to the outside world. And as I said earlier, the biggest supporter of COVAX, the one that allows vaccines to reach in favorable conditions developing countries. We had to create a mechanism of transparency of export vaccines for one simple reason, because we wanted to make sure that the companies with whom we had contracted purchase of vaccines were doing the right thing. And we had reasons to doubt particular one producer, so we had to implement this. But this is just a transparency mechanism. I can tell you more than 530 authorizations that were requested for export outside of the European Union. Only one was rejected out of 530 and more. So this gives you an idea that we remain quite open to the outside world. Inside the Union, as I said, the projections look much better now than a few weeks ago. And we are only delayed by the production shortcomings, not by anything else. So I think when the marathon is over, we will talk again. I hope you will agree with me that this was the best option, that maybe we made a few mistakes here and there, and that's obvious. Who didn't? And I mentioned the UK experience as well. Who didn't? And no one should claim that one is perfect. No one has the silver bullet in dealing with COVID. We need to be humble. But overall, I think we chose the EU way, which is a solidarity way.
Thank you. I'm just going to bring it back to some of the kind of miscellaneous questions. I've put them in because they're good questions, but they don't come under any of our specific themes. The first one, I think, really probably comes back to civil society. And many of us understand the EU project in those terms of an ever closer union. So the question we have is, what can we do to reach out to the pro-European population in the UK, but also the EU, to counteract Euroscepticism and illiberalism that we see rising? And has the EU considered a programme to facilitate civil society organisations and almost bypass the UK government in this instance? And the second question is something very different, but certainly again ties in with this theme of European demos and civil society, is what are the ambassador's thoughts on the proposal for a European Super League? And does the EU desire that type of cultural integration with the UK in areas like sport?
Well, I don't think I'll make any comment on the Super League, which apparently doesn't exist anymore, or has been suspended if I listen to the news. No, I mean, that's too dangerous ground for me to enter into. I have my own opinions. I'm a fan of football, but I won't go into that. Some of our leaders have expressed their views, and of course I follow what they say, but I understand that the issue is gradually being a non-issue in the sense of the project not going forward. Regarding support to our friends and those who believe in Europe, of course we are very honored and very humbled by the support the European Union has in the United Kingdom. So many people believe in our union. Many of them would like to have remained in the European Union, but we also have to fully respect those who have a different opinion. And we, as much as we regret the Brexit decision, we fully respect it. And we engage with the authorities in full respect for the decision taken. You wouldn't expect us to act otherwise. So as ambassador and as the EU delegation, we have to treat every UK citizen on equal footing. And we are ready to engage with those who want to engage with us, and we need to respect those who do not want to engage with us. For those who want to engage with us, and there are quite a few organizations, citizens, our doors are open. Our doors are open. We are more than ready to engage. As I said, we have a few programs going on regarding citizens' rights, which are open to civil society. We are ready to do more. of that, and to, we are doing a number of things around Europe Day, which are open to everybody who wants to join us. So it's a very much open and transparent approach, and always ready to engage and contribute to debates about Europe like this initiative today. You can always count on me and my colleagues to be there for debates, for discussions, and to engage actively, proactively with the British society, with those who support us and with those who do not support us, because we believe that only through an informed debate can we make progress.
Let me, Catherine, just put a last cluster of questions to the ambassador that broadly speaking on education, and I know that there are embassy staff here that may also be able to help. I'll first start with a couple of issues that were raised by the Settled charity and the 3 million that deal with students, and I think it's important that we inform European students about that. The first one is that perhaps that not all current European students know the meaning of continuing residence, because some of them might have chosen to spend part of the pandemic back in the home countries in the EU.
Yeah.
And as a result, for them not being able to change their pre-settled status into settled status, I think that's important for our students to know. And perhaps if any member of your staff wants to come in this, by all means. The second one is that for students who register this year in British universities, but have not been able to come to the UK because of the pandemic, that there is a risk that they may not qualify for the pre-settled status, and as a result of that, they might end up having to pay a fee for a visa, which is nearly £350, as well as a £500 bill for health insurance in the UK. So these are two important issues that perhaps students need to be aware of. And finally, a broader question, perhaps to you, which relates to the higher education sector in the UK. Many of aspects of this educational cooperation between the EU and Britain remain open, and which ones will not be available anymore?
Thank you. There was a little break in your second question around higher education, but I think I got the essence of it. On the situation of students, I'm not aware of all the details, but I know that these issues that you mentioned, they have all been raised by us with the Home Office, and they have been dealt with in the last few weeks. The report I have from my colleagues is more positive than negative, in the sense that the Home Office seems to be open to consider some of our issues. Regarding, for instance, the interruption of studies, they seem to be open to our request to extend the limit of time that people can be outside. So everything linked with the impact of COVID in the life of students, and you mentioned some aspects of it, are being duly discussed between us and the Home Office. I don't know if colleagues of mine can say more than this. If they can, they should step in as soon as I finish on my next reply, which is about higher education. So I was this morning in a very, very interesting discussion with the representatives of the Russell Group, and I think the University of Manchester was represented there as well, of the top universities in the country, discussing Horizon Europe and other issues. So, in a very telegraphic way, also because we don't have much time. UK is in Horizon Europe, and UK is out Erasmus. We would have preferred the UK to be inside the Horizon and inside Erasmus, but that was the choice of the British government not to enroll and agree to be a participant country in Erasmus. Regarding Horizon Europe, the UK will be a member from the very start, and you know, British institutions are already taking part in the first calls. There will be, once the program is approved, which is not yet the case at the EU level, after that there will be an association agreement or formalities that will be completed before summer, so that the UK can fully participate in the program. But as I was saying, they can already apply to ERC, European Research Council grants that are already being put online. There will be most likely, because as I said earlier, third country is a third country, there will be a potential for exclusion of Britain of UK from certain elements of the program, like it is foreseen for third countries. But what I think we can guarantee is that this will be done on a case-by-case basis, fully justified, and this will be exceptional in the sense that we don't expect exclusions to amount for more than 1% of the total program. So anyway, my message around Horizon Europe is a very positive one regarding the UK participation. And I can only encourage all the institutions, including the three that are represented here today, to engage, to enroll, to apply. The track record of UK institutions is absolutely impressive in the Horizon. Your rate, your participation, your success rate is above average. On ERC, you know, the UK used to have a share of 20. And so I think there's a very good perspectives for cooperation, and we're very glad that we could find an agreement with UK on Horizon Europe. Contrary to that, and with much regret, the UK has decided not to engage with Erasmus, and that's you know, that's a pity, I believe, because we could have continued. This is one of the most successful EU programs ever, and it's a pity that Britain is out of it. And this has clear consequences for the capacity to engage in cross-border cooperation there. But I have Cyril with us, as I mentioned earlier. So if he wants to step in on some of these issues, is most welcome. Cyril.
Thank you, Ambassador. Yes, I am the Research, Education and Innovation and Innovation Counselor at the Embassy, at the delegation. And well, I cannot add much to what the ambassador just said, except perhaps that on the settled status issue, indeed we have a good discussion, good dialogue with the Home Office. It's an evolving issue. The dialogue is ongoing. What I could invite all of you to do is to consult regularly our Facebook page, where we have a very lively page where we update all the time on developments, particularly as regards citizens' rights, including for students, including events that we organize regularly on those issues. I have written in the chat earlier the address to this Facebook page, so just keep consulting it because there's lots of useful information there.
Thank you, Cyril. I think this is very important. Let's stay in contact on issues regarding citizens' rights. It's one of my top priorities up to June and beyond, of course. On a regular basis, I exchange views with my colleague ambassadors, and all the embassies and consulates are very focused on this. And regarding education as well, so let's stay in touch with Cyril in particular as your focal point, and for all matters dealing with higher education as well.
That's absolutely great. Thanks very much for your contribution on that. I know that we are coming towards the close of the event. Let me say once again how privileged and how honored we were to host this lecture. We covered an awful lot of ground, and thanks very much for your openness to engage with the questions from the audience and from Catherine and myself. Thank also to the audience for staying with us for an hour and a half. My students in my class never last that long. Perhaps I need to do better in the future, but the ambassador doesn't have such problems. It was great. Thank you ever so much, and we hope that in the future we'll have the opportunity to host you in Manchester in person. I'm sure that there will be a lot more to discuss. So once again, Ambassador, thank you very much for your talk.
Thank you all. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for hosting me. And I look forward to continue this conversation wherever you are. Thank you very much.
Indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.